The silent warning. The galaxy had always believed that humanity was small, weak, and divided. For centuries, the great empires had looked at Earth as nothing more than a late arrival among the stars. They measured humans by their numbers, their technology, and their limited colonies, and decided they were harmless. Yet the galaxy had always made the same mistake, judging humans only by what could be seen, never by what remained hidden. The first sign that something was wrong came from the edge of the Orion sector. A routine alien patrol of 7 warships failed to return. At first, the council of their empire dismissed it as an accident, perhaps a collision with debris or a navigation failure near a pulsar. But when fragments of their ships were found drifting, burned, twisted, and scattered like ashes across the void, the whispers began. Something had destroyed them, and it had been fast. Too fast. Reports spread from system to system. Trade ships spoke of human fleets moving without sound, without warning, seen only for moments before vanishing again. Survivors from border skirmishes spoke in low voices of weapons that tore through shields as if they were nothing, and soldiers who fought as if they had been waiting their entire lives for this war. Every witness said the same thing. The humans fought with fury, not for conquest, not for wealth, but with a fire in their eyes that chilled even the most hardened warrior. In the halls of the alien councils, the leaders gathered in fear. One voice shouted that the humans should be crushed now, before their fire spread further. Another warned that humanity had already crossed a line and that facing them would be like waking a sleeping beast. Their arguments rose louder, echoing through chambers filled with cold starlight. None of them understood why humanity had changed, or why their fleets now moved with such terrifying silence. All they knew was that the balance of power was shifting, and they did not know how to stop it. On Earth, silence filled the shipyards. Colossal warships were being born beneath the oceans and within hollowed asteroids. Machines worked day and night, unseen by the galaxy, as humans prepared something the stars had never witnessed before. They spoke little, but their silence was not weakness, it was a warning. The calm before a storm that would shake entire civilizations. Among the alien fleets, rumors became fear. Captains whispered that humanity was building something in secret. Scouts were sent to watch Earth, but few returned, and those who did came back with broken voices. They told of weapons hidden in the dark, ships that appeared from nowhere, and crews that fought like they had nothing to lose. They said humanity was not fighting battles. Humanity was sending messages, messages written in fire. In the quiet of deep space, a single alien freighter stumbled across the wreckage of another fleet. The debris floated endlessly, twisted metal glinting in the starlight. But among the wreckage was a signal, faint but sharp, repeating over and over. It was a human voice, steady and calm, speaking in Galactic common. "We warned you." The freighter captain fled, carrying those words back to his people, and once again the galaxy trembled. The strange part was not that humans fought back. Every species defended themselves when cornered. What frightened the galaxy was how different humanity's silence had become. They no longer pleaded at councils, no longer begged for seats at tables of power. Instead, they prepared, quietly, coldly, as if something ancient had awakened within them, as if the wars of their own history had returned in spirit, carried forward into the stars. The galaxy had faced war before. It had seen empires rise and fall, planets burned and fleets reduced to dust. But this was different. Humanity carried something unseen, a fury hidden behind calm faces and quiet words. Their silence was the silence of soldiers before battle, of predators before the strike. It was a silence that said more than any threat ever could. For the first time, the great empires looked at Earth and felt unease. They could not measure this new strength. They could not see its limits. All they knew was that their patrols kept vanishing, their fleets kept failing, and the humans kept moving in silence like shadows across the stars. The galaxy had mocked them once. Now it whispered their name with fear. And so the warning spread, not in speeches, not in broadcasts, but in wreckage and silence. A warning written in the shattered bones of fleets and voices carried back by terrified survivors. In the cold eyes of soldiers who had seen too much. A warning that humanity was no longer asking to be left alone. They were preparing to make sure of it. The galaxy, vast and ancient, suddenly felt smaller. Civilizations that had never feared before now trembled at the thought of what might come, because somewhere in the dark humanity was waiting. Their silence was not peace. Their silence was the signal before the storm. A storm that would soon break, and when it did, the stars themselves would shake. The gathering storm. The galaxy had not known fear in a very long time. Empires stretched across hundreds of stars, confident in their fleets and their ancient traditions. But the sudden silence that followed humanity's first strikes unsettled even the oldest rulers. They were used to enemies who sent threats, who made demands, who declared their wars with noise and fire. Humanity did none of that. Humanity watched, waited, and moved in shadows. It was a silence that frightened them more than any roar. In the grand chambers of the Council of Nine, the most powerful alliance of alien empires, the rulers met beneath ceilings carved from crystal and light. They argued for days. Some demanded that humanity be destroyed immediately before they grew stronger. Others whispered that perhaps war was too dangerous, that humanity should be brought into the fold with diplomacy. But every suggestion crumbled under one truth. They did not understand the humans, and what cannot be understood cannot be controlled. A single report silenced the chamber. It was a recording brought from a scout ship that had followed a human fleet near the Vega corridor. The recording showed human warships moving in perfect formation. Engines darkened as if they drifted in silence, and then, without warning, they lit the void with fire, tearing apart a pirate fleet in seconds. No signals, no mercy. The humans fought as though the enemy had already been judged. When the recording ended, no one spoke. The silence in that chamber felt heavier than the silence of the humans themselves. Far from the council halls, the hidden power of Earth grew. Deep beneath oceans, shipyards expanded, birthing warships larger than anything the galaxy had seen from humans before. Massive carriers rose from the depths like sleeping giants awakened. On the far side of the moon, swarms of smaller craft were built and trained in drills, striking targets with ruthless precision. Humanity did not boast of these ships. They did not broadcast their strength. They simply prepared as if they had always been waiting for this moment. The people of Earth, too, changed. Once seen as a divided world, full of disagreements and rivalries, humanity now stood strangely united. It was as if every conflict of the past, every memory of wars on Earth, had been poured into one single flame. Children whispered of the fleets and schoolyards, workers spoke of sacrifice and duty, soldiers trained with cold determination. Across every continent, a quiet storm gathered in human hearts. They no longer saw themselves as weak. They saw themselves as a force that had been underestimated for too long. Meanwhile, alien spies tried to learn more. They sent cloaked drones, disguised merchants, even diplomats who pretended to seek peace. Few returned with answers, and those who did spoke with unease. They said humanity carried itself differently now. Their leaders spoke little, but their eyes carried something that unsettled anyone who met them. There was a weight in their silence, like people who had already decided what must be done, and were simply waiting for the moment to do it. One report came from a diplomat who had visited Earth under the guise of trade. He described walking through the great shipyard of Mars. Rows upon rows of half-finished warships loomed above him, their steel glowing under floodlights. The workers did not look at him, did not smile, did not wave. They simply worked, welding and building in silence as though the diplomat did not exist. When he asked why the workers did not rest, his human guide only said, "There is no time for rest. Not anymore." That single sentence haunted him even after he returned home. The galaxy's fear grew sharper. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as young and reckless. But now the great powers realized they might have been wrong. Humanity was not reckless. Humanity was patient. Their silence was not born of weakness. It was the silence of a storm building behind the horizon, and every empire could feel the winds beginning to shift. Across the stars, fleets were called back from borders and gathered near home systems. Planets began to strengthen their defenses, building shields and fortresses in panic. Merchants changed their routes to avoid human space. Some species even spoke of abandoning whole colonies near Earth, fearing they would be the first to burn when the humans finally moved. Fear traveled faster than light, and it spread like fire through the galaxy. Yet still humanity said nothing. No broadcasts, no speeches, no declarations. Their silence was louder than any threat. It left the galaxy to wonder, when would they strike? Where would they strike? And how much fury had they been holding back all these years? In one quiet star system, an alien commander gathered his officers. He spoke of humanity, of their growing power, of their terrifying silence. His voice shook as he gave his warning. "They do not fight like us. They do not think like us. They are not asking for our approval. They are waiting, and when they are ready, the stars themselves will know their wrath." His words echoed through the halls, carried on by whispers to every corner of his empire. The storm was no longer coming. It was already here, building in silence, gathering strength. And as the galaxy looked toward Earth, it understood something too late. They had judged humanity by what they saw, never by what humanity hid. And now the hidden fury of an entire species waited to break free. The stars had known many storms, but none like this. First strike of wrath, the galaxy's patience ended before humanity's did. After weeks of silence and scattered disappearances of fleets, the empires could not wait any longer. Fear turned into anger and anger into resolve. They formed a coalition, gathering ships from 5 great civilizations. Their combined fleet was a wall of steel and fire, the largest assembled in centuries. They believed numbers would crush silence. That overwhelming strength would smother whatever hidden fury the humans carried. The fleet moved with confidence, stretching across a sector like a chain of suns. Thousands of ships bristling with weapons advanced toward the human frontier. Commanders told themselves that humanity would bend under such pressure, that no young species could withstand such force. Yet behind their reassurances, unease still lingered. They remembered the wreckage, the whispers, the survivors who spoke of battles ending in minutes. Still, they marched forward, hoping the silence would finally be broken in their favor. In the dark of space, humanity waited. Their warships did not meet the coalition head-on. They did not issue challenges or warnings. Instead, they let the enemy cross the border, deeper and deeper into human territory. Every alien officer felt it, the sense of walking into a trap. But by the time they realized it, retreat was no longer possible. The storm had arrived. It began with shadows. Human ships appeared without sound, sliding out of the void like predators from tall grass. They struck at the edges of the fleet first, destroying scout ships before alarms could spread. Entire wings vanished before commanders even realized they were under attack. The coalition responded with fury, turning weapons toward the darkness, but the humans were already gone, reappearing elsewhere, striking again. They fought like ghosts, unseen until it was too late. When the main body of the coalition finally engaged, the truth became clear. Human ships were not as large, not as heavily armed, yet they moved with a precision and unity the galaxy had never witnessed. They weaved between enemy fire, cutting apart formations, turning strength into weakness. Alien commanders shouted orders, but panic spread faster than commands could travel. The humans were not fighting for survival. They were fighting with wrath. On one alien battleship, the crew stared at their sensors in disbelief. Hundreds of human vessels moved in perfect synchronization, their attacks timed with deadly accuracy. "It is like one mind," a frightened officer whispered. Before the captain could answer, the ship shook violently, its shields collapsing under a barrage of human fire. In less than a minute, the proud warship broke apart, consumed by flames. The coalition tried to regroup. They formed defensive circles, pouring fire into the void. But humanity adapted faster. They struck weak points, shattering defenses piece by piece. Carriers fell silent as their escorts were torn away. Cruisers vanished under coordinated assaults. Even the most advanced dreadnoughts, massive engines of war, crumbled under relentless strikes. It was not just the weapons that terrified the enemy. It was the way humans fought, calm, focused, merciless. Every shot seemed to carry the weight of something older than the stars themselves. Across the battlefield, alien soldiers felt something they had not felt in generations: helplessness. They had believed their numbers made them invincible. They had believed humanity would cower as every young race before them had done. Instead, the coalition was being carved apart, and the humans showed no sign of slowing. It was not chaos. It was discipline. A fury controlled, sharpened into a blade that cut through the galaxy's pride. One commander tried to surrender. He broadcasted his plea across the sector, begging humanity to stop. But his words vanished into silence. The humans did not respond. Their ships kept advancing. Their weapons kept firing until his fleet was nothing more than wreckage floating cold in the void. That silence spoke louder than any words. Humanity did not forgive, and humanity did not forget. By the battle's end, the coalition was gone. Thousands of ships reduced to drifting ruins, their fragments glowing faintly against the endless dark. Survivors were few, scattered, fleeing toward distant borders with terror carved into their faces. They carried stories the galaxy would never forget. Stories of humans who fought like no species ever had. Stories of a wrath that turned armies into dust. Stories that spread like fire, igniting fear across every world. But even more terrifying than the destruction was the restraint. Humanity did not push beyond the battlefield. They did not invade worlds or burn colonies. They struck, destroyed, and vanished again into silence, as if to remind the galaxy that this was only the beginning, that they could go further if they wished, that the storm was still gathering strength. In every corner of the galaxy, rulers and soldiers asked the same question: what drives them? Why do humans fight with such fury? No answer came, only the memory of wreckage and silence. The coalition had been powerful, ancient, certain of victory, and yet it had fallen in a single clash. If that was only the first strike, then what would come next? The stars themselves seemed to shiver as if they too understood. Humanity had awakened, and their wrath was no longer hidden. It was loose, burning across the night sky, and for the first time the galaxy knew what it meant to tremble before a species that had been underestimated for far too long. The stars shake. The wreckage of the coalition fleet drifted in silence, scattered across the void like a warning carved into the stars. For weeks, broken ships burned faintly against the darkness, their twisted metal reflecting distant starlight. Merchants passing through the sector whispered of the ruins, their voices heavy with fear. They said it felt like sailing through a graveyard, a reminder that even the strongest empires could be shattered in a single night. News spread faster than light. Survivors fled to their homeworlds, carrying stories that no one wanted to believe yet could not ignore. They spoke of human warships that fought with unnatural precision, of commanders who refused surrender, of fleets turned to ashes in hours. Some called the humans demons, others called them executioners. But everyone agreed on one thing: humanity's wrath had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the Council of Nine, fear turned into chaos. The great rulers shouted over one another, blaming, accusing, panicking. Some demanded a second strike, larger and stronger, to erase humanity before their fury spread further. Others trembled at the thought, arguing that if one coalition had fallen so quickly, then another would only feed the fire. For the first time in centuries, the Council had no clear answer. Their power, once unquestioned, now felt fragile. On distant planets, civilians watched the stars with unease. Whole colonies whispered of evacuation. Families packed ships, not waiting for orders, convinced that humans might come next. Children asked their parents if the humans would attack their world, and even the strongest leaders struggled to answer. Rumors spread of human fleets seen near borders, though most sightings were shadows and fear. Yet the fear itself was enough. Trade routes broke down. Alliances cracked. The galaxy shook not only from the battle itself, but from the terror that followed. Meanwhile, humanity stayed silent. Their fleets did not boast. Their leaders did not send messages of victory. They returned to their shipyards, repairing and preparing, as if the destruction of thousands of enemy ships meant nothing to them. It was this silence that unsettled the galaxy most of all. They had expected demands. They had expected threats. Instead, humanity left only wreckage and the heavy silence of restraint. It made the galaxy wonder, if this was what humans did while holding back, what would happen when they no longer did? On one border world of the Arcat Dominion, an alien general addressed his troops before dawn. His voice was low, his words slow, heavy with dread. We are not facing a young race anymore. We are facing something ancient in their blood, something they have carried through every war of their history. They will not stop. They will not forgive. And if they come here, our walls will not hold. His words spread through the soldiers like fire, and though they stood ready, none of them truly believed they would survive. The galaxy's balance was broken. Old rivalries crumbled as empires began to turn their eyes inward, fearing humanity more than each other. Even the most arrogant powers now spoke in whispers when the subject of Earth arose. They no longer called humans reckless or weak. They called them inevitable. The storm had been unleashed, and all that remained was to see how far it would spread. But while the galaxy trembled, humans moved quietly. Shipyards expanded further. Hidden bases lit up with activity. New fleets emerged, larger than before, armed with weapons designed not only to defend but to dominate. Humanity spoke no words of conquest, yet their actions spoke enough. They were preparing for something greater, something the galaxy could not yet imagine. In the quiet corners of space, poets and priests tried to give meaning to what had happened. Some said humanity was the punishment of the stars, a force born to humble civilizations grown arrogant. Others whispered that the humans were simply mirrors, reflecting the cruelty the galaxy had shown them for so long. Whatever the truth, one fact echoed everywhere. The stars themselves seemed to shake when humanity moved. The galaxy, vast and ancient, had seen many wars. But this was not war. This was a reckoning. Humanity had revealed a fury so deep, so controlled, that it unsettled every empire to its core, and still they had spoken nothing. Their silence was louder than any declaration, a silence that promised the storm was only beginning. Far from the council halls, far from the whispers of fear, a single human commander stood aboard his flagship, watching the endless stars. His expression was calm, but his words carried the weight of an entire species. They thought we were weak. They thought we would kneel. Now they know, and soon the stars will know more. And with that, the gathering storm deepened. The galaxy shook not only from the past, but from the shadow of what was still to come. The stars were quieter than ever before. The ruins of the coalition fleet still drifted in the black, silent tombs that no empire dared to approach. Merchant ships steered wide around the sector, as though even empty space carried the memory of humanity's wrath. And in every corner of the galaxy, whispers carried the same chilling truth. The humans had not just fought, they had judged. Worlds that once mocked Earth now held secret councils in fear. The arrogance that had filled alien courts was gone, replaced by nervous silence and half-spoken questions. Could humanity be reasoned with? Could they be contained? Could they be defeated? Each question ended the same way, in silence, because no one had an answer. Even those who had never seen the humans felt the weight of their presence. The galaxy itself seemed smaller, as though every star now belonged to their shadow. On Earth, the mood was different. There was no celebration, no cheering in the streets. The people did not see their victory as triumph, but as duty. The shipyards kept working day and night, forging new warships without pause. Soldiers drilled harder, not softer, as if preparing for a war that was far from finished. Humanity was not drunk on power. They were steady, cold, and united, as if guided by something older than the stars. They remembered the centuries of being ignored, dismissed, and insulted. They remembered every slight, every threat, every time the galaxy had looked at them and seen nothing, and they decided they would never be ignored again. Across alien empires, fear became law. Some governments passed decrees forbidding their people to even speak of Earth. Others poured resources into desperate defenses, building weapons they knew could not withstand humanity's fury. A few whispered of alliances, treaties, desperate bargains to earn mercy, but none dared send envoys. The silence of Earth frightened them more than any words could. To reach out and be met with silence was worse than to be met with threats. It left them uncertain, always waiting, never sure when the storm would break again. Stories spread through markets and taverns, growing with each telling. A lone trader swore he had seen a fleet of human ships larger than any he had ever imagined, drifting silently through an asteroid field. A refugee spoke of a human commander, whose eyes froze her blood even across a view screen. A soldier told of facing a human boarding party, of seeing their calm faces as they moved through fire, and of running before he could watch his comrades fall. Whether true or not, the stories took root, feeding fear like dry wood feeding flame. Even the oldest civilizations, those that had ruled for millennia, felt the change. Their leaders gathered in ancient halls staring at maps of the stars. Humanity was still small compared to them, yet they had struck with a force that shook the galaxy. The elders understood what others would not admit. Numbers no longer mattered. The humans had revealed something stronger than fleets, stronger than weapons. They carried a fury no empire could measure, a fire no enemy could extinguish. One alien philosopher put it into words that spread across the stars. Humanity does not fight for conquest. They fight to remind the galaxy that they exist. And in that reminder, all others tremble. His words became prophecy. Back in the ruins of the coalition fleet, a lone alien scout ventured too close. His small ship drifted among the debris, sensors scanning for anything of value. He found no survivors, no signals, only silence. But as he turned to leave, his instruments caught a faint transmission buried deep in static. It was a human voice, calm and steady, repeating over and over, "This is only the beginning." The scout fled, carrying those words home. By the time he reached his world, the entire empire knew them, and once more the stars shook. Yet humanity did not move to conquer. They did not spread their fleets across the galaxy or burn planets in fire. They simply returned to silence, as if waiting for the next move to come from someone else. But their silence no longer meant weakness. It meant warning. A warning every empire understood too late. Children across alien worlds now whispered in fear before sleeping, "The humans are coming." Soldiers sharpened their blades and polished their armor, but their hands shook. Leaders stood in shining halls, but their voices cracked when Earth was spoken of. The galaxy had faced many enemies, but none like this. For the humans had not only won a battle, they had carved fear into the hearts of all who lived under the stars. And so the galaxy learned. Fear was not in the size of fleets or the strength of weapons. Fear was in silence, in patience, in the wrath of a people who carried their history like a blade. Humanity had been judged weak for too long. Now they were the ones passing judgment. Far above Earth, in orbit around the quiet planet, humanity's greatest fleet waited. Row after row of warships floated in silence, their hulls gleaming in the pale light of the sun. They did not move, they did not speak, but their very presence shook the stars. And in that silence, the galaxy found its answer. Humanity would not be ignored again. The storm was not over. The storm had only begun.